Hi, my name's Martin Purnell, and welcome to Off-Grid Christianity, a weekly podcast for those who go or don't go to church and where we can meet and hear from those that have made their faith count. This podcast series is to encourage via conversation, and you can contact us as well by email ogc@accessradio.biz, and biz is spelled B-I-Z. So today's guest, who is he? He claims that his life so far has been a wild and fantastic ride. He wrote a book available on Amazon, etc., with a great title. Well, I like it anyway. It's called You Don't Know Sheep. Even the cover looks great. Maybe you should make a t-shirt of it. Our guest has just left his job of 11 years to set off on a new adventure. He wants to teach leadership principles to people based on the reaction he has been getting from this book. In his words, he is totally stepping out in faith. So why did he write You Don't Know Sheep, an unconventional field guide for today's faith leaders? What similarities are there between faith ministries and his previous role as a leading consultant and designer in AV systems for venues of all sizes? What has he learned so far regarding leadership principles? What does he think about a previous guest's comment regarding Christian ministries that the way they manage change is appalling? They tend to kick people out rather than honour them. And, he went on to say, that Christian leaders should not be having a night of the long knives. Those thoughts were from Dave Pope, co-founder of Spring Harvest, founder of Salt Mine Trust, and a pioneer, which included the Dirty Hands nationwide tour in the mid-1980s. So why and how is our guest going to get his hands dirty in the weeks, months, years ahead? Let's find out and learn more from today's guest, and that is David McCauley. David, thank you so much for joining us today. For those that know nothing about you, first of all, where are you based, good sir?
I am in Dallas, Texas.
Have you got a traditional Dallas accent?
Not traditional, no. I moved around a little bit. So I grew up in the Northeast, Baltimore, Maryland, Pennsylvania, that area.
Uh-huh.
Most of your people would probably know Washington, D.C. more than the other areas. I grew up about an hour and a half north of Washington, D.C. and about 3 hours south of New York City. My mom was from Texas. I moved up there when she was a kid. The Texas pool called me and they said, you got to come down here and get some brisket. That's how I got here. There's a whole funny story about that. But the first time I ever came to Texas, my mom brought me down to meet family and she took me to this place that is one of the top brisket places where she grew up. And I never had anything like that before. It was a pretty Texas thing at the time when I was young.
Yeah.
I remember coming back and telling my friends, that's it. I'm moving to Texas. They got this stuff called brisket. I don't even understand. I have to move. I'm going. And I was old enough.
So that's why you moved, because of your stomach, which is what I would have done, I must admit.
It's real.
Quite right too. Well, let's find a bit more about you besides brisket as well, David. 5 important, or maybe not so important, questions to kick off this podcast with. Question number 1. If you could invite anybody from history for an evening meal, alive or dead, so that you could ask them questions, who would it be, please?
I think it would be C.S. Lewis.
Good call.
I mean, there's so many people to choose from, but man, like just an impact on me personally. Books like The Four Loves, and one of my favorite books is actually The Great Divorce.
Oh, okay.
Just the impact of just how he thinks and just the process that he kind of went through with different things like that, I think is really good. And then you hear about things about how he impacted everybody, in Britain and just in things like that during the war and stuff like that, just a lot of different things that he did that were I just thought would be very, very fascinating to hear his perspective of how he thinks through that stuff.
Well, that's a great call. I mean, obviously in my time machine that I bought on eBay, I'll be able to bring him back.
Yeah.
No problem at all. And that would help him out with his science fiction books. So that'd be good.
That'd be really good. Yeah.
And of course, you might want to ask him about Joy, his American wife, and how that worked out. And
Yeah.
You see, I love the thing about C.S. Lewis, the fact that he had a pub in Oxford where he was based, and they affectionately called it the Inklings.
Yeah.
Yeah, to sit down, have a pint with old C.S., old Clive Staples, who's from Northern Ireland, where I live now as well, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be a great evening. Obviously, you'd have to cook him a meal, though. So what would you cook him?
Brisket. I mean, we'd go down and get some brisket, and man, he'd be like, I'm moving to Texas. That's what he would say. I know he would. He'd be like, oh, wait a minute. They have this? Oh, I'm in.
Question 2. Who's your favorite biblical character or favorite biblical story or favorite parable, please, David?
Not just because my name's David, the whole story of David just fascinates me. how he's a broken character that messes up so much, but still, has a heart for God. And yeah, he's got to suffer the consequences and different things like that, as you should, but it just shows, like, for me, it's kind of a forward picture of Christ's relationship versus a lot of times in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, you just kind of have this thing of, hey, you messed up, you're dead. You messed up, you're dead. You do that, you're dead. Hey, if your ox kills somebody, we kill you, or whatever. But in that story, man, he messes up. He probably should have died a bunch of times. Like he should have probably been killed a bunch of times for various reasons. Most of them is his own doing. You know what I mean? And so that to me was just an interesting picture of what's to come, in the New Testament relationship. So that's part of that. And obviously there's a whole lot of other reasons and stuff like that. But I'd say that's probably my favorite biblical character.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Question 3. If you were Prime Minister for the day, but as you are in America, in Texas, you can be President of the United States for the day, and you could change any law or impose a new law. What would it be, please, David?
I think the thing that popped in my head was currently in the U.S., they teach evolution as the scientific method. And I would probably say I would make a law that says you have to look at both things. You have to look at creationism. You have to look at evolution. Or at least intelligent design, right? So intelligent design and as evolution, because I believe that both of them are just as faith-based as the other. And I think it's unfair to say one's science-based and one's not, because there's so much faith that goes into the evolutionary side, just as much or more. They don't have any more real data, like hard data, that happened than others do about intelligent design. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably where I would go with it. That's the thing that popped in my head. Just like, that's what I would change. That it's this equal playing field. You got to talk about all of it.
Well, over here, it's supposed to be a theory. It's anything but. So, yes, you've got a big amen from loads of people over here.
Yeah.
Level playing field and talk about it. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
You'd make a great president. Question 4. Outside of family events, what has been your most enjoyable day out, please?
I do a lot of off-roading. So,
oh, do you?
Yeah, 4x4s and things like that and that kind of stuff. And so my happy place is the mountains. And it's an interesting thing. So most people, when they think of mountains, they think of like the Colorado mountains, like the Rocky Mountains, when you kind of picture mountains. And I go to the Rocky Mountains a lot. But what people don't understand is in the Seattle area, up in the Pacific Northwest, there's mountains up there that are just as tall. But the difference is in Colorado, you're starting at 6,000 feet above sea level.
Yes.
You hear what I'm saying? So you go to a 12,000 foot mountain, you only see half that mountain, and it's still huge. Don't get me wrong. It's still huge. But when you go west, and that was the thing that I found when I was able to go and actually explore out west and go up the Northern Cascades and that area and Rainier and different places up there, you're at sea level and you're seeing a 14,000 foot mountain from sea level, and it could be an hour or two drive away, and it looks like it's right there in front of you. It's that big. It's insane. And just being able to do that kind of stuff, because there's actually a place up there, up in that area, where they have rainforest. So like in a day, if you did it fast enough, right, you could be in a rainforest, you could step in the Pacific Ocean, you could be on top of a mountain having a snowball fight because it's that tall, and then you can be in the desert all in a day. There's so much terrain up there that's different, just as you go inward, it gets drier and more desert-like. It's just such a fascinating place. That's probably one of my favorite places, and probably one of my favoriteest trips I did with a friend years and years and years ago. So that's just what that brings to mind, that kind of adventure.
That's brilliant. The trouble is, do they have any good brisket up there?
They do not.
You see? So it's not perfect then, is it, really?
It's not perfect.
No.
If I was a fish guy, they're supposed to have good fish, but I'm not a fish guy.
All right.
I'm a brisket guy,
Fishkit. Great. Last question before we then get into the meat of the subject today.
Yeah.
What has been your most embarrassing moment to date, please, David?
There's so many. I stick my foot in my mouth daily. I think the biggest one that was really just kind of an interesting thing is I was actually, this is a few years ago. There's actually a video of it. They edited it down, thank God. But for some reason, I speak in front of people pretty often.
Yeah.
I kind of got out of the practice for a little while, for a couple of years, and somebody had me come in for a keynote. So there's about 1,500 pastors and leaders in this event, and I'm doing the keynote. And I get about, 2 minutes in, and I have a panic attack on stage. And God bless them. They were really amazing because they were like, at first the people were calling up and going, "Hey, are you okay?" Like, so when people in the crowd start calling up and going, "Are you okay?" That's kind of a thing when you're in the middle of a talk. And then at some point, like I was just like having a bad one. And man, they just came running down and just prayed for me. And some other person came up and just kind of started talking a little bit, that kind of thing. So I was able to kind of walk it off a little bit. And then I was able to get my breath and get myself back and then came back up and then they kind of helped me make sure I was good. And then I was able to actually finish it out. But yeah, that was the strangest thing that's ever happened. And it was just so embarrassing, but it was good. It was humbling. Let's put it that way. It was definitely humbling.
Wow. So what caused it, do you think?
Actually, it's one of those things that I don't like seeing myself on video.
Right.
And the room itself had a pretty long echo, and I didn't test it like before. So when I walked up, they had this big iMag picture of myself from a camera. So all I saw was basically me on video on this huge screen in the back of the room. And the delay from my voice when I spoke would come back to you like 2 seconds later. You know what I mean? So it just kind of gives you that interruption. And then you just start spinning, and then your anxiety just picks up. And that's just what happened. I wasn't prepared in that way for what I saw and heard. Usually it's just notes up there. I didn't expect me on video. And typically that's just, I kind of clam up on video sometimes when somebody's like, here's a camera, I'll put it in front of your face. And you're like, So it's like that kind of 1,500 liters.
But the other thing, of course, David, for those that don't know really, is that you are big in the audio-visual side of the market. And so to hear your voice come back 2 seconds later, that would have set me off thinking, what is the monitor guy doing? What's the front of house guy doing?
Right. And it's a known thing. And again, and that was kind of part of the thing. I started kicking myself going, I should have tested this. I should have, you know what I mean? I should have been up on stage last night and just kind of did a couple things just to get used to it. You know how that kind of stuff goes, But I was just being cocky and just like, oh yeah, I don't have to. Let's just go to dinner. It's fine. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that. I haven't actually spoken in front of 1,500 people. Not for a keynote anyway.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Martin, you could speak on anything that you want. Don't think so.
And I did. Because my brain went off a trail, It's great.
Yeah.
It ended well. Let's put it that way. I was able to get back on track.
Well, that's good.
And do the last 45 minutes pretty solid, and everybody seemed to enjoy that. So that was good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, just that 15 minutes on the front end was, pretty exciting.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, you said it taught you humility.
Yeah.
But it also, I would have thought, broke the ice completely, because unless you're really hard-nosed, stubborn type person like JR in Dallas, for instance, where you wouldn't have given a monkeys.
Right.
This is like, to 99% of the people were going, wow, he's real. What's going on here?
Right.
I want to listen now. I want to learn.
Right.
This, if that's okay, because I really do want to know why you wrote the book, You Don't Know Sheep.
Yeah.
And obviously on the back end of that, a keynote speaker.
Sure.
Let's talk about what led up to you writing that book in the first instance. So tell us more, please, as to how you got involved, not just with AV, but how you got involved with speaking and wanting to write a book.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting thing. So I've always been into the AV side of things ever since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And then actually when I was about 16, it's kind of an interesting thing. I started touring with bands and different things like that. So I used to sing and do some things like that. But then I got into the thing where I figured out that the actual technical people actually got paid, where a lot of times the band never got paid. You know how that goes.
Been there.
I switched over to that a little bit more. And I did a lot of regional touring up and down the East Coast and things like that. But it was interesting because there's a lot of, bars and clubs and that kind of thing. So I always kind of make fun because I tell people, I've been in more bars and nightclubs before I was 21 than I have been since. You know what I mean? I was a pretty wild and rough kid at that point. Nothing too crazy, but crazy enough. So it was one of those things that I kind of grew up in a Christian home. My dad was Catholic. My mom was Assembly of God or more Pentecostal. Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting thing that I got to see both sides of that. And then I did the prodigal son thing when I got to be a teenager, and kind of walked away from all that, and then kind of came back through. So it's a long story, but it's a good story at some point. But came back into church probably when I was around 20, 19, 20 or so. And I got mentored by a pastor, and I was in school for psychology at the time, just at one of the state schools for psychology. and also working other things. And he kind of mentored me, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll try and give this pastor thing a go. And so I got a scholarship to a university over here for theology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went there for a couple of years, and I learned so much on a lot of different levels. And at that point, my mentor, who had been back in the ministry, still in the ministry or whatever, I got a call that he had a total mental breakdown. And I kind of came back to that. I saw how the church kind of handled that a little bit on certain levels. And that just really kind of put me in a tailspin of, I don't want to do this. And if that's how they act, with the people they're supposed to love, I don't know if I'm be a part of that, So that kind of started some of that journey, as it were. Fast forward, I was doing other things with bands and things, and I started my faith walk again and doing good things on that side. And I kind of got burnt out of doing the touring stuff and doing that type of things. And I landed at a place called Sight and Sound Theaters. And Sight and Sound Theaters, just to give you kind of an idea of what it is, they do biblical shows. So it's kind of like a Broadway type thing, but it's all biblical shows. And the scale of it is that the front curtain of a typical Broadway show is about 20 foot tall by 40 feet wide. That's what the front curtain is. The front curtain at this place is 40 feet tall by 100 feet wide. Then it has 100-foot side stages. So it's 300 feet wrapped around a 2,000 seat audience.
Wow.
300 feet of stage wrapped around it.
Yeah.
And there's two of them in America, actually. So anyway, I'll have to say, they were doing things like Noah and things like that, where like it's at scale. Like, you know what I mean? The whole second half of Noah, you're actually inside the ark, 300 feet wrapped around, like 40 feet tall set. It's pretty impressive. It's a pretty cool place if you ever get a chance to go to any of their shows. But I was sitting there, and I'd never been around sheep very much. And this is kind of where it all started, because it was for these shows, these biblical shows, and they were doing Christmas shows and different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of animals, in the show incorporated in. And at some point, they had a lot of sheep. And I remember sitting on deck one day and just kind of thinking about some different things. And I'm watching the sheep, and they're falling into this and that. And they're
real life sheep, not actors dressed up as sheep.
No, this is real life sheep. So I just kind of going, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so now they're like, I'm going to start watching them, just because, what else is there to do at that particular moment? And they're kind of cute, but they can kind of be nasty to each other. You know how that goes, and that kind of thing. And I'm watching it. And then all of a sudden it hits me. I just start laughing. I'm going, okay, God, I get it. This is kind of a joke. This is kind of a poke at people. We didn't get that context because we don't really hang out with sheep too much.
Mm-hmm.
But the people you were talking to at the time, that's what they did. They lived with sheep, and even with the sacrifice type thing back in the day, you had to have a sheep or a lamb at least in your household. What I mean? So you knew what that thing was. So I'm watching them and I'm going, okay, so they're always falling into this. They're always getting tangled up into this. They're always in trouble. They're always crying out for help. And the shepherd person has to come and grab them and pull them out of the light pit or untangle them from whatever they were tangled in on the set and, that kind of stuff. Like I said, they can be mean or they can be, sweet, depending on what they're doing. You see them kind of walking around in groups, which is good, that type of thing. But then I noticed too, which has really, really rung it for me, was they're constantly pooping.
Apparently so. Yes.
Yeah. And so when it's on a stage, you really see how much, you know what I mean? And so it was just one of those things. I said, okay, now I really get it. And I get the joke. It's like, wherever they go, they leave a wake of poo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, God, yes, I totally get it. That's funny. And so that's where the name of the book came from. Then later it kind of dived into, again, I'm just a autodidact. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm constantly learning and self-taught of a lot of things. So I'm always still into psychology and different things like that and leadership. And a lot of the times throughout this thing, I've either led the company I was with, or I've been a part of probably 5 church upstarts, helping to try and lead those type of things. I've led a couple of different multi-million-dollar companies over the years, actually grown some of them 5 times. So taking them from a certain size to, $25, $30 million.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that side of it as well, that I've been a leader in those aspects. But then I'm also doing what I do. I'm around leaders a lot. So I'm around pastors and leaders and that type of stuff. So I get to kind of see the backstage side of things, sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can see where people are actually real and then what they are in their persona, So anyway, about, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 years ago, I just felt this calling that God just said, hey, I need you to write this book. And I'm like, okay. I never read anything before. I'm terrible at writing. It's just what is this thing. So I got it about 80% done, and it just kind of fizzled, and I didn't really touch it for, I don't know, 12 years, maybe 10 years. And I used to teach at a lot of conferences. I used to, and that's kind of a lot of where this came from, because I develop theories and that kind of things and actually teach it at conferences, whether it be leadership conferences or tech conferences or whatever. I used to do about 30 a year. That's probably about 15 years ago.
Wow.
So a lot of this is a combination of those type of things. But then a couple of years ago, probably about 2-3 years ago, I was teaching somewhere, just a small little thing, and somebody comes up to me and is like, "Hey, you should write a book." And I'm kind of like, "That's funny you say that. I kind of have like 80% of one done." And then she's like, "Well, hey, I'm a publisher. Would you mind like sending me what you have, and like I'll see if it's good, and let's see if we can do something with it." And so anyway, I sent her what I had, and she calls me back and is like, "Oh my gosh, like this is better than I thought it was going to be." And
Better than Wuthering Heights, she said.
right. And so she's like, "Hey, can we do this?" So anyway, we spent about 2 years, editing and rewriting some stuff and getting it going, and then released it last year. So it's been out about a year.
Yeah.
And so it's been an interesting journey.
You see, thank you for sharing that, because obviously I'm big into facilitating and getting people to come on board and help out. And the fact that she said, well, let me help out. You gave it to her, all 80% that you had written so far, to see what could come back. So
Sure.
it could be improved, a refiner's fire, for want of a better sort of scriptural view take on it.
Yeah.
Because of my brain and the way that I work, any bands that you worked with that we now know?
Nobody of like, a lot of them kind of rose and fall. They were kind of probably more like BNC artist kind of bands and stuff like that.
Yeah. That were hopefully to make it.
I worked with some one-off type stuff. I worked with bigger bands, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call that really working. Like, you know what I mean? Working with them, it was like, hey, they showed up at a place and they needed somebody to do something, and
Yeah, got you.
the ones I actually worked with were a lot of Nashville touring bands, but none of them that ever really got to any kind of real stardom before they broke up or imploded, and that kind of thing. There was some definitely promise in some of them, but nobody really got to that level.
That's the thing. You might be the next Taylor Swift.
Right.
You might not be the next Taylor Swift. Sometimes you need that fortunate break. Sometimes you just need someone to come on board and say, look, I think you can make it. You've got to trust me, and take it from there.
Yeah.
And I think in your case, the fact that you are going and speaking to people in these big venues, 1,500 people at a time, that obviously says a lot about your integrity and what you can offer. And I did notice that when I was reading out at the front end, the show notes, for want of a better word, when I quoted something, well, a few things from Dave Pope, who over here in the UK, certainly my age and above, will know who Dave Pope is.
Okay.
And he also then went to help out big time with a chap called Billy Graham.
Yeah.
But anyway, the comments that I then read out to you was that the way that Christian leaders manage change is appalling. They tend to kick people out rather than honour them. And also that they're not supposed to go around having a night of the long knives. I saw your facial expressions, your body language, as if it was something that resonated with you. So tell me more, please.
Yeah, I think that's a definite thing. So there's a story in the book, actually, I talk about, but I've seen that in action in a lot of different places. And it's one of those type of things. I think it's just bad leadership. I agree with him on a lot of those type of things. There's something to be said if you're starting something and you're going after a certain demographic, to be able to have a little bit more like, this is who we're going after and this is what we're doing. And that might not upset, but just offset some people that they probably aren't going to go along with that. And that's fine. But when you have an established community, and then all of a sudden somebody gets this brilliant idea that we need to change everything, and and if it dumps half the people off the boat, so what? You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. I think that's bad leadership. That's just kind of where I'm at with that. I remember a story where at one point this pastor called me and said, "Hey, we're going to build a new facility. And it's going to be great. That kind of thing. We want you to come and help, and it's exciting." And it tells me all the stuff that everybody always tells you. And I was like, "Great, I'll come and check it out." And I show up to the place that they're at, and I walk in, and I'm surprised, because what typically would be not what you would call a hot like a skyrocketing type ministry, as you would call it. You know what I mean? It looked like my grandpa's church, basically, is what I'm getting at. And there wasn't really anything, to do on stuff. And it was one of those things that, it was just a piano and organ, and that's it. Not the typical what you think of big, huge churches kind of growing, but this place was packed. And I'm like going, oh, interesting. That's fascinating. And it kind of devolves into two different stories. But with this story, I was just kind of sitting back, kind of noticing and talking to them. And they're like, yeah, you're going to build this new one because we got so many people coming in and so many people want to come. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm looking around and I'm going, there's a lot more older people in this church than, especially the growing church, right? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, what is that? And so I started investigating and asking people, what's the story with that? And talked to some of the patrons there. And they just tell me the same story of, hey, they were at this other church. And all of a sudden, this church decided to go a different direction. And they got displaced. And they just felt lost. And they all floated over to this church. So now this church is growing like crazy because of all the leadership of the other churches in the area just dumped them off the boat, And I'm like, wow. And so I contrast that with a different church. There's a church up in Connecticut. And in Connecticut, it's a little bit more, I'd say it's a little bit closer to Europe as far as churches go. There's like a halfway line in America between the North and the South. And below that line, when you meet somebody, the question is always, hey, where do you go to church?
Yeah.
And north of that line, it's, do you go to church?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so it was interesting. There's a church up there that I thought that did leadership really well in this fact that they had 5 different services, and each service was progressively more rock and roll, contemporary type things. So the first service was very traditional. Yep. And the second service was a little bit less. To the end, man, they're rocking. Like, you know what I mean? So this is one of those things. And I was talking to the pastor about it, and he's just like, yeah, this is what we do. And so what he does is he tells them straight up, hey, people, we love you. In this first service, he said, we love you. And we're willing to do this extra service so you guys are comfortable and get what you need. He goes, but we're not doing it for free. You need to stay after service and greet the people coming into the next service. You need to build into them. You need to talk to them. You need to hug their children. You need to this and this and this. You're the patrons of this place. Like, you're the legacy. And these people that are coming after you are your legacy. You need to breathe into them. We're doing this for you. You need to do it for them. Otherwise, no deal. So then what you started finding was some of the people that come to the early service would stay all day loving on people because they got progressively younger as the music got louder and whatever. Yeah. And they wouldn't go into the actual service. They stay in the lobby all day and just love on the people. And you start seeing these relationships with these older people, talking to teenagers and just having these interesting relationships that we're building and stuff like that. And it's like, that's good leadership to me. Like, that's the way the church should be going. That's the way, when I look at this, I go, okay, that's how this thing is supposed to be, community. And you learn from the people that have been there, and the people that have been there that are lonely. A lot of them are in retirement homes or whatever, and they don't get to see people. They're staying there all day. Church fed them, took care of them, did all the things, and they're getting loved by people and given love all day long. So now Sunday is their favorite day. Mm-hmm. They live for Sunday. And a lot of them live a lot healthier of lives because they got a place to be, because they got a mission. And to me, I go, that's a leader. That's a leader that says, hey, before you die, you got a mission. You can't die yet. No, you can't just go sit in that room or whatever. No. You got something to do.
The trouble is that it's so blatantly simple, and yet probably the most difficult thing to bring in, because we live in a very selfish society. And I think what you're saying here is that the first church you went to, they were like what I can call steeplechasing.
Right.
They've got their clipboard. They've got everything they want in a church. But as soon as they can no longer put a tick in a particular box, they go elsewhere.
Right.
It might be flagging up to you, and this is where I'd like to hear from you now, if that's all right, that the pastor number one that you went to, actually, it wasn't because of what he was doing or saying. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and the result of which is nothing to do with his ministry at all. That is it. What do you think? Tell me more.
I think that's 100% correct. And the thing is that church is going to die because it wasn't investing into the younger generation. It was just saying, hey, this is what we like. And if you don't like it, that's fine. And all these people like it. So it's growing right now, but all those people are dying and going to be dead soon. And all that, to me, that's the fail, right? To me, I'm going, think about all that knowledge. Think about all that, love that needed to be given. Think about all that type stuff that was taken away from those other churches and those churches or whatever, and put into this thing where, okay, now there's just cliques in a thing, and they can have fun with each other, and that's fine, that kind of thing. But what about the younger generation? There's such a disconnect. And that's where I think the other one, and that's what church is supposed to be, is again, where you take the wisdom of the older people, and you bring it down to the people that are younger. That's the whole reason to go. Like that's the big part of that, having mentors and having those type of relationships where people are in trouble, and there's people that have walked through that trouble, and you can go actually talk to those people that have walked through that trouble. That kind of community is what I think the church as a whole forgets about. That's what church is that guiding principle, but also that thing of like, again, you have people that have walked through that before. And it's a whole lot easier to walk through it when somebody's already been there and can look at it from a 30,000 foot view while you're down in the trenches. You know what I mean? And go, no, turn right. That's the beauty that we're missing. That's why, so when you say that kind of stuff, earlier the quote from the other person, that was my guttural reaction. I'm going, yeah, no, that's exactly what this book is about. That's exactly what this is about.
So let's be blatantly honest then. If that's what the book is about, people should be surely buying the book. Leaders should be buying the book, but they're not. Yeah. Or maybe they are. If not, why aren't they buying it?
Well, this is the funny part, right? So it's hilarious. The book sales are actually going pretty good, and more people are getting it. But what I find is this. Like, I'll talk to people and they're like, oh man, I got your book. I'm like, oh, cool. Did you read it? And they're like, yeah, I haven't read it yet. I'm about to, you know what I mean? And then I talk to them a month later and I'm like, hey man, so what'd you think? Man, I was reaching for it just yesterday. Like, you know what I mean? So it's there. They bought it. It's looking at them. They just haven't, what helped with that is I got a good voice actor out of California to read the book. So now it's on Audible.
Very good.
And again, it's fully distributed, by the way, too. So any bookstore of any type can get the book. So it's not just like, but it's on Audible now too. And that's when I'm starting to find more people now. They're like, hey, I just listened to your book. Like I bought the book, but I ended up downloading it and listening to it. And it's like, oh, okay, now I'm really getting it. And that's where I'm right at the moment, is starting to get more people reaching out going, hey, I need you to come talk to our team, or I need you to come speak at this event.
Yeah.
And kind of come and, because it's such a different, my take on things is a little bit different than everybody else's.
Such as?
I don't want to steer it a certain way. I was just going to say, to kind of give you an insight on some of it. This is kind of thing that's really different, but it's very interesting. It's the way that God, I feel, created people, but also animals. And I know I might get some flack for this, but I don't care. But it's just one of those things that, we're all his creatures, you know what I mean? And he designed them in a certain way, and blood flows through everybody the same way and that kind of stuff. And yes, we're not animals, we're different creatures than that, but there's still points that everything kind of has the same thing running through them, right? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the reason he talked to these people about sheep, because Jesus knew that. Jesus knew that these principles are the same. And so when you look at sheep as a microcosm of people, you can see a lot of different things where sheep by nature, if they stay in a group, that's where their protection is, right?
Yeah.
So if you keep them moving, they stay in a group. If you keep them led well, they stay in a group. If you leave them sit somewhere too long, what happens? They start killing the grass, they start killing everything around it, and they start spreading out. What happens when you start spreading out? Well, you're a lot easier for the enemy, lions, tigers, bears, whatever, to pick off. So it's this kind of thing. It's up to the leader to keep them moving, keep them in fresh pasture, keep them in this, keep them in that. Because when they're led well, they're together. And when they're together, they support each other. And that's health. So just by looking at that and seeing these different things, if you take that as a microcosm of people, just like we talked about these two different leaders, one was like, hey, we're going to stay here. And, all the people are just going to kind of come and they have their own things and they're going to start spreading out and not really doing anything because they're not being led really, and they're already spread out because they left their flock to come over to this other thing, where the other one's leading, going, no, we're all coming together and we want to build something and we want to grow something and be healthy. And so it's an interesting thing. I kind of take it from sheep because maybe really understand sheep and the whole difference between sheep and goats. just as a real quick thing for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Goats, they always say, sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell, or whatever. The thing is it's not that goats are bad, but it's a definite thing if you've ever been around goats, is that sheep kind of stay in tighter proximity to each other. They stay in groups more. As soon as you stop goats, or even just have goats in general, they spread out just right away. Boom. And they're off into everything. They're always testing stuff. They're biting whatever. They're eating all the things they shouldn't eat. They're falling off stuff, but they're out by themselves, and they get picked off a lot easier because they don't have that group dynamic, And that's what God was trying to talk to people about at that time. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, it's not that goats are bad. It's the way that they act is the same thing. So if you want to be good in this, it's going to be, hey, you stay with the pack in the tribe and have the protection of that. Or you can be a goat and you're going to be off on your own devices, prodigal son, falling into whatever and doing whatever and being out there with nobody to help. And so that's kind of the thing of that. So I kind of modernized it. I said, and sorry for all the cat people, but no, I just said, if Jesus came back today, he'd probably talk to everybody about cats and dogs.
Very true.
When you think of dogs, you think of loyal pack. They want to be a part of the pack. They're always there. They're always with you. They're always, they want the leader. They want to be near the leader, as it should be, as kind of a picture of Christ, right? Like, you know what I mean? If you look at your dog the way your dog looks at you, that's how you should be looking at Jesus. Yes. yes. Whatever you want. And when Jesus says, hey, go, and he throws a ball somewhere, you go, woof, and you run off and get the ball and you come back and it's great. Like, you know what I mean? That should be the relationship kind of thing,
Very good.
Whereas a cat,
you don't even have to go there.
right? You know what I mean? But it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So to them back in the day, they knew as soon as he said sheep and goats, they knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So to modernize it today, we go dogs and cats, and we go, oh yeah, you don't even have to finish that sentence.
Yeah.
So if it's a relationship thing, what happens with cats? Well, they come and like you when they need something, but the rest of the time you can go fall off the earth.
Yeah.
And a lot of people treat Jesus that way.
Very good point. Well, what I want to do, because this is just brilliant what you're sharing, it's really encouraging me, if nothing else. So there you go. There's a feather to put in your cap.
Hey, my work is done.
What's interesting with Dave Pope, and you didn't know this, I mean, Dave Pope is in his retirement years. Okay. He studied psychology originally, like yourself. You've obviously become a pastor, gone through it. So when you go and speak to pastors, and I want to go back to that fantastic story that I could really follow, pastor number 1 and pastor number 2, the North-South divide.
Sure.
And I don't know whether this is in the book or not, because hopefully it's not, so that people go and buy the book.
Right.
That's what I want. You were able to walk in, and the minister, the pastor of that church number 1, he couldn't really pull the wool over your eyes in such a way, because you'd already been there. You'd already learned some stuff that God wanted to use. And for those listening today, it might not be on that subject, but God can use what you've gone through in the early years. A bit like myself, radio, music, everything else is culminating in this. Minister number 2, above the North-South divide,
right?
Completely different mindset.
Right.
But then, as we know to our costs, sometimes churches will say, we know better than you, Mr. Leader.
Right.
You're not doing it the way it should be done. We're going to oust you. And unfortunately, where I live, that's all too common a thing. So what happened to those 2 ministers, and what do you share with them so that maybe they could get back on track?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. One thing is at a certain point, you can only do what you can do. Like, so if you're an ousted minister or anything like that, you can learn from what you can learn from, and you can look back and go, hey, what could I have done better to lead them into a way or into a thing that made more sense? Like, you know what I mean? If I had more time, or if I was able to go do it again, you saw the outcome of this. So what could you change to make the outcome better? So that's your bottom line thing. You can't blame yourself for it, because people are people, and people are selfish, and they're going to want what they want. And if you have a different vision for that, and God gave you that vision, it's not just some personal vendetta or whatever thing that you did, like, you know what I mean, that you think should be good, then you just got to trust that God is going to continue that in some way, and you're going to be able to get to the next thing that God wants you to be at. Mm-hmm. And I go back to this really quick. We're so easily caught into like a hero trap, basically, as it were, Whereas we beat ourselves up after we do something wrong so bad because it's like, we're expecting ourselves to be Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. It's like with those people at a certain point, you as a leader cannot change their mind. It's not even your job. That's the Holy Spirit's job. Your job is to connect with them the best that you can and love them the best that you can and guide them the best that you can. That's your job. And you need to figure out, did you do that well? And if you can go, yeah, I felt like I did that well, then happy day. It might not have ended the way you think it might or should have ended, but that's okay because God's got a plan. And the thing I look at it too is I see this all the time where God gives somebody who goes, hey, I need you to start this church, whatever it is, or I need you to be a part of this ministry. And the person goes in and starts this ministry, and all of a sudden, it's going good or whatever, and everything's cool. And they start going, oh, well, now I need to make this ministry the biggest ministry. I need to make this thing better, and I need to make this better, blah, blah, blah. And oh my gosh, it's going to be the hugest thing in the world. Oh my gosh, and they get caught into this thing of that. And God's just going, hey, man, I didn't ask for that. He said, I need you to just go there and love these people for a while. And what the person doesn't see is that God had a plan for this. And the plan might have been that there was some kid or some young person or some old person, who knows, that was there. And they needed love in a certain time and a certain thing and a certain way, whatever, that only you could give at that time. And so he needed you there for that. And you might never know who that person is, but that might change the trajectory of that person's life, which changes the trajectory of the world. That person that you might have hugged or helped or forgave or whatever, or taught this little tiny thing for that moment might have changed their trajectory, and they could change the world. So you might not be the one changing the world. So you got to get that out of your head. And that's okay that you're not changing the world. But if you look at things through the thing of, God wanted me here for this reason, for this time, to meet this person or whatever, and you might never know who it is, but just know that you were there for that. And then when he calls you to something different, you can go kicking or screaming, or you can go happily. And I find so many get wrapped up into, oh, I'm going to do this for God, that they neglect their family, they neglect their friends, they neglect themselves, they neglect everything around them to do this thing for God. And it's like, wait a minute. If God wants it done, it's going to get done. You know what I mean? So are you really doing it for God, or are you doing it for you? Again, not to be hard on anybody or anything like that. It's just that kind of thing. You just want to check it out and just go, hey, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And at a certain point, you leave your hand open and you go, okay, God, what's next? Where else do you need me to change that life, or to help that person, to just speak life into somebody so the Holy Spirit has an open door to go work on them, and then they turn into whatever. Mm-hmm. That right there, that to me is the goal of anybody that's burnt out of church or in a bad position. And the bottom line too is I'm going to say it. If you really have something from God and people don't want it, brush the dust off your legs and move on. Let them sit in whatever they're sitting in, and let the Holy Spirit deal with them. Done. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that's none of your business anymore. It's time to move on, and it's time to go, okay, God, what's next? So that's what I would say to those people that are in that place.
Wow. Two things, first of all.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up the minister number one, pastor number one, and pastor number two scenario.
Sure.
Whatever happened to those guys?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to lead on to what I think is going to happen to you and how you're going to get your hands dirty in the future. More about that in a few seconds. But first of all,
okay,
that great story, because I really bought into it, Mr. 1 and Mr. 2. Whatever happened to those two guys and the churches?
Yeah, so the one minister I know, the one in the north, the second one, I know he continued on for years and just recently retired and actually turned it over to some people that he was mentoring and stuff like that. And it seems to be a good turnover. And that place is blowing up.
Wow.
I mean, just in the Northeast, it's just reaching so many people in a new way, in a place that just wasn't being reached before, So his legacy is strong.
You see, the problem is with that is that he did something radical by handing it over, which is almost unheard of I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry, but that is like, wow, you did what? You're not holding on to it?
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
But that's the thing too. Like he's one of those ones that would open hand things.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? He's just like, hey, this is what I feel God saying. Like, you know what I mean? You know, so
that's brilliant.
I'm going to follow that. Because I don't think you can do radical things without having an open hand. Because if you're too in on the consequences, you'll never make those choices. You just can't.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Very much so.
You got to be open. Like, hey, God said to do this, so I'm going to do it. And that, hey, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
You know, he just said, I'll have clothes on my back and food in my belly. I might not have a flashy car. I might not be known by anybody else, but this is what I'm supposed to do. And again, it could be what you're supposed to do just to find that one person that's going to change the world. And you're not it. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I know it's not me.
Yeah. But the other pastor, I followed it a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 years after that. And I saw some decline in that. I don't know that they ever actually built the building that they were planning, because I think it just kind of did a rise and fall.
Yeah.
And when it came down to brass tacks, and again, a lot of just people were just like, you know, they were dying off. So there was no legacy. So why invest in it?
Yes. Well, here we go then. Drum roll time. I've never met you before, but I am such a big fan of Dave Pope and how he so impressed me as a very, very young Christian back in the 1980s, where he did a nationwide tour to like the main venues of each major city to like 2,000 people and going on about the Dirty Hands tour. And it was a bit like a review. You'd have a poet, you'd have a band, and then you'd have Dave talking about getting hands dirty for Christ. So affected me. I'm still here. The Sheep, you've written a book.
Yeah.
You've now made that decision to sort of, hey, do you know what? I'm going to step out in faith and live by faith.
Yeah.
So over to you then. How are you going to get your hands dirty in the future, please?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. So I have a couple of different things I have going on. I own a couple of businesses, and one of those businesses is actually helping Christian business people figure out leadership. So as a business leader myself and helping with that kind of thing. So one of us is actually doing that and actively working with businesses across the country and I mean, across the pond, as it were. Hey, I'd be happy to come over, you know? So there's that side of things. And then, you know, just kind of the book type thing. I've been looking for opportunities to speak and help people. I'm doing some consulting with some bigger ministries and some smaller ones. So a lot of the bigger ministries are, you know, flying me out to kind of talk to their leadership teams and helping them with some things, just kind of look at things from a different perspective. And a lot of smaller ones are, you know, just kind of reaching out and asking for help on stuff. And I'm trying to help them the best that I can. I'd love to be able to find some places that, you know, would be good to speak and speak more about some things. And again, you know, get my hands dirty a little bit more of just like, you know, getting into this and really having some good hard conversations with people to go, hey, you know, where is the church as a whole supposed to be going? You know, what is the church supposed to be doing? Let's try and get our head out of the dogma of this other thing and out of the, you know, and into more of, hey, let's just look at this and go, what is this supposed to be about? You know, it's supposed to be about loving people. How do we make it more about loving people and get out of these other things that keep on dividing us? You know, that's what I'd like to do is be able to have more opportunities to speak and encourage and have these, you know, have these conversations.
But how difficult is it though to do that for you personally?
You know, it's one of those things. It's an interesting thing because I'm not a self-promoter at all. So I think that's the hardest part. Like, I don't want to self-promote. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that I know how to. I've done it from a business standpoint on certain things, and I've been successful at that. But for this, I'm kind of going, okay, God, if you want this message out, then you find the people, you connect them with me, and we'll get it out. And if not, maybe it's you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Maybe you were the one person that I was supposed to write this book for, and this is going to change your life for the foreseeable future, and then you're going to impact people. That'd be great. And if that's as far as it goes, I'm pretty open-handed on that. I don't need it to be some big thing, but I'm ready for it to be if it needs to be. So that's just kind of how I feel about it. So it's not very difficult for me. I'm very flexible on things because again, I've positioned myself in a place that I have flexibility. I don't need money from this, really. So it's just God's blessing me in other ways to support me being able to do, this things. And so when the opportunity comes, I go, okay, God, I'm in. And I just kind of leave it open handed.
See what happens. And if God said to you, look, I want you to give up everything and go for this, go and speak to the penguins of South America and penguins of Antarctica, would you be in that position whereby you could actually say, do you know what, I would give up everything and go and talk to the penguins?
Yeah. I'd like to think that I could, until you actually get that call, it's kind of hard to go, oh yeah, I'm in.
It is.
So I'm going to be careful. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not like, whatever, but I feel like what I've noticed in the past is that he gives me what I need through other things to be able to do this more. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he'll bless other things to give me, rather than me having to ask for a lot of money from people and drumming up this and this and this and this. In my mind is that the other things that I'm attached to will do so well that they're going to support and pay for this. That's just kind of how I see it. And again, like I said, I'm not opposed to covering expenses and things like that and that kind of stuff. But as far as asking for like a bunch of money to come speak somewhere or something like that, I don't see it as a job in that regard. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's a calling more than a thing like that. And again, I'm not saying the people that do that and need to have that money for speaking, like I'm not coming down on them at all. That's not a thing. I'm just saying in general, the way I'm trying to set this up is that other things finance that so I can bless people when I need to bless people. And when people have the money to pay for it, then that money that they paid will bless other people that don't have the money. You know what I mean?
I'm going to have to stop you there, David. You're using wisdom again. We won't have it on this.
I know. Let me say something crazy.
No more wisdom, please, David. No more. We can't cope with it.
Yeah.
But absolutely right. And in essence, basically, God gave you those businesses to fund these things. And if people can afford it, great. And if they can't afford it, great, because you've got your business to do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tent ministry if we're going to get scriptural.
Right. There you go. Let's do it.
Get your hands dirty in a tent ministry.
Yeah, that's right. All across Ireland. Let's go.
And Europe and those penguins. You mustn't forget those penguins. They're very important.
You got to see the penguins.
Exactly. As I keep saying, it's not a black and white issue. Moving on. Drum roll time, please. David McCauley of Fort Worth in Texas, home of Sergeant Bilko, my hero. That's saying something, isn't it? He explains it a lot. Who is your Christian hero, please?
I got to say, again, I go back to this. I called him out earlier, but really, I think C.S. Lewis is just somebody that's really impacted me over the years. Some of the things he wrote, some of the books he wrote, have been impactful from an allegory standpoint and just from a thinking standpoint, but also just the way he lived his life. From what I know of, he and his wife, also an American, some of the things that happened with them and the way that he loved her through a lot of pain and a lot of different things and a lot of things that happened, and just kind of served and showed himself as what I would say is a good man of God. So I'd say that's probably one of my ones that come to mind that isn't like a biblical kind of hero or anything like that.
And of course, he's from Northern Ireland, where I now live. Yeah, and the Eagle and Child pub in Oxford. I will go there one day when it reopens, just to be a member of the Inklings. David McCauley, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a privilege. And I look forward to having many a conversation with you in years to come. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
And if you haven't already hit the like and subscribe button, please do. It means a lot. Thank you. Next time on Off-Grid Christianity, it's our Easter special.
So much of my ministry has been with folks who are on the margins of faith, wrestling and struggling with, what do I have to believe? What should I believe? Can I still believe this? And so I think starting with this idea of, do I think it's literal or not, may not be super helpful. Now, I do believe that it is literal. I think it is physical, all those things. But I don't know that I would start with that binary. I would start with, what is this story that I'm captivated by? And how might it change if it's real? Like, what might that actually mean if it actually happened, if it's really real? And then lean into that. And I just encourage people to protect themselves from, sometimes when you believed in something and then you feel like you don't anymore, or you're not sure if you believe something, there can be a sense of shame that comes along with that and guilt of like, why can't I just figure this out? And I just would encourage people, like with the story of Jesus, lean into the story, listen, live into it, and then begin to ask those questions. What would it mean if it was really true?
So please join me with a repeat from last year's Easter podcast with Preston Sharp. And wow, it is well worth listening to again. Until then, cheerio.